It was a calm evening in Washington, D.C. The city lights shimmered, reflecting off the glass walls of a brand new luxury hotel, a hotel that stood as a symbol of fairness, equality, and respect for workers. And the woman who made it all possible was none other than Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But tonight, Alexandria wasn't arriving as a public figure, politician, or owner. She came quietly, dressed simply, jeans, coat, and glasses, no camera crew, no security detail, no assistant following behind. Just a woman wanting to experience her own creation as an ordinary guest. As she entered the grand lobby, a soft piano played in the background. Two receptionists stood behind the desk, one busy scrolling on her computer, the other chatting on the phone, hardly paying attention to the guests waiting. Alexandria walked up with a gentle smile. "Good evening," she said kindly. "I have a reservation tonight. The name is Ocasio." The young receptionist didn't even glance up. "Sorry, we're fully booked," she replied flatly. Alexandria kept her tone polite. "Oh, could you please double-check? I booked it a few days ago." The woman sighed, clearly annoyed. "Without checking the system properly," she muttered. "Like I said, we're full. Maybe try a cheaper hotel across the street." There was a brief silence. Alexandria simply nodded, smiled faintly, and said, "Thank you. I'll wait here for a moment." She moved to a quiet corner of the lobby and sat down. A few people nearby noticed the interaction. Some looked surprised, others uncomfortable. No one knew who this ordinary-looking woman really was, because in reality, the person who had just been denied a room was the owner of the entire hotel. 9 minutes later, the entire staff would realize who she really was and their world would turn upside down. A few minutes passed. Alexandria sat quietly in the hotel lobby, her eyes calmly observing everything: the flickering chandelier lights, the echo of footsteps, the staff rushing past without so much as a glance in her direction. It was strange. This hotel had been designed to welcome everyone equally. That was the whole point of her vision. But what she was witnessing tonight told a completely different story. The receptionist who had dismissed her earlier was now laughing with a couple checking in. They were clearly wealthy, dressed in designer suits, carrying luxury bags. The same woman who couldn't be bothered to double-check Alexandria's name was now greeting them with a big, fake smile. Alexandria simply leaned back, watching, her face calm, her mind quietly processing what was happening. A waiter walked past carrying a tray of champagne. He paused near her and asked softly, "Ma'am, are you waiting for someone?" Alexandria smiled, "Just for my room. But apparently they're full tonight." The waiter hesitated, sensing something off. "That can't be right," he said under his breath. "We had several rooms open earlier." Before he could say more, the receptionist glared at him. "Luis, don't talk to the guests unnecessarily. Go back to the bar." Luis nodded apologetically and hurried away. Alexandria noticed everything: the arrogance, the class bias, the complete lack of respect. Still, she said nothing. Moments later, another staff member approached her, a tall man in a dark uniform, probably the lobby manager. He looked her up and down before speaking in a condescending tone. "Ma'am, this area is for guests only. You can't just sit here." Alexandria raised an eyebrow. "I am a guest. I have a reservation." The man smirked. "If you had one, you'd have a room key by now." She took a deep breath, holding back the frustration that any ordinary person would have felt by now. "I understand," she replied softly. "I'll wait a few more minutes." The man shrugged and walked away, whispering something to the receptionist, and they both laughed quietly. The other guests began to notice the scene. A woman at the bar whispered to her friend, "Why are they treating her like that? She seems polite." Her friend replied, "Probably someone who doesn't belong here." The irony couldn't be greater: she belonged there more than anyone else. Have you ever seen someone treated unfairly just because of how they look or dress? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to mention your city and country. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Back in the lobby, tension continued to grow. Alexandria's phone buzzed, a message from her assistant. "Ma'am, we confirmed your suite is ready. Everything's fine on the system." She smiled to herself. So the problem wasn't the booking, it was the people. To test them, she approached the front desk again. "Excuse me," she said calmly. "Could you please check once more for Ocasio?" The receptionist rolled her eyes. "I already told you, we're full." "Please don't make a scene," Alexandria replied gently. "I'm not making a scene. I'm just asking you to confirm." The woman tapped the keyboard lazily, pretending to search, then shook her head. "No reservation. Maybe you spelled it wrong." At this point, Even a few nearby guests began filming quietly on their phones, sensing drama. One man whispered, "She's handling it so calmly. I'd be yelling by now." But Alexandria didn't raise her voice. She looked at the receptionist, her expression steady. "Thank you," she said. "I'll be right here if anything changes." As she turned away, the receptionist smirked to her coworker. "Some people just don't understand when they're not welcome." Those words hit like a knife, but they didn't break her. They only strengthened her resolve to see what her staff had truly become when no one was watching. Because in less than 10 minutes, they would find out exactly who they had turned away. The clock kept ticking, and at the 9th minute the quiet woman they mocked would walk back to that desk, not as a guest, but as their boss. The soft hum of the lobby air conditioning mixed with distant laughter from the bar. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat quietly in that corner chair, still waiting, still calm. But the atmosphere around her had changed. Whispers were starting to spread. A few guests who had noticed the earlier exchange began murmuring among themselves. "Isn't that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?" Someone whispered. "No way," another replied. "Why would she be sitting here like that?" But those who knew her understood she had always been humble, grounded, and fiercely observant. She didn't need to shout to make her point. She believed in letting the truth reveal itself. The same rude receptionist glanced over at her again, rolling her eyes. "She's still here," she muttered to her colleague. "Some people just don't get it." The front desk manager, a tall, well-dressed man named Richard, walked over, clearly annoyed. He spoke in a tone that was meant to sound professional but carried arrogance underneath. "Ma'am, I've been informed that you've been waiting here for some time," he began. "Yes," Alexandria replied politely. "I was told there are no rooms, but my reservation should be under A. Ocasio." Richard gave a stiff smile. "I'm afraid my team has already checked. We have no record under that name." Alexandria's voice remained calm. "I understand. Could you perhaps check under the hotel's VIP booking list? It might be reserved under a different account." Richard's tone sharpened. "Ma'am, we can't just hand out VIP rooms because someone claims they have one. Now, please, if you don't have a confirmed reservation, I'll have to ask you to leave the lobby." A hush fell over the nearby guests. The disrespect was now obvious. Alexandria's eyes met his, steady and shaken. "Are you asking me to leave my own hotel lobby?" she asked softly. Richard chuckled nervously, thinking she was joking. "I'm asking you to respect our policies," he said coldly. Still, she didn't raise her voice. Instead, she leaned slightly forward and said, "I built this hotel on the idea of equality and dignity for every guest. And what I'm seeing tonight tells me those values are being ignored." Richard frowned. "Excuse me? You built this hotel?" He laughed lightly, looking around as if expecting applause. "Ma'am, please, we're very busy tonight. Don't make up stories." Several guests began filming now. They could sense something big was about to happen. One woman whispered, "Why are they treating her like that? She's literally one of the most respected politicians in the country." Her friend shook her head. "Some people only respect you when they need to. Have you ever been treated unfairly by someone in power and you wished you could show them who you really are? Tell your story in the comments below. And don't forget to say which city and country you're watching from." Richard straightened his tie. "All right, ma'am, if you don't leave now, I'll have to call security." Alexandria gave a faint smile. "You're welcome to do that." A few seconds later, 2 security guards walked in. They approached carefully, unsure what was happening. "Is there a problem here, sir?" one of them asked. "Yes," Richard replied confidently. "This woman refuses to leave the premises." Alexandria stayed silent. Her calmness made the guards hesitate. There was something in her eyes that didn't match the story they were being told. "Ma'am, may I ask your name?" one of the guards said politely. Alexandria looked him in the eye. "Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez." The younger guard froze for a moment. His eyes widened. "Wait, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?" Richard frowned. "What? Don't be ridiculous. She wouldn't be standing here like this." But before he could finish, the guard's earpiece buzzed. A voice from the back office whispered something urgently. His expression changed immediately. He turned to Richard. "Sir, we have a suite booked under that name. Presidential level." The color drained from Richard's face. The receptionist stopped typing, her fake smile fading instantly. Alexandria stood slowly, her tone still soft but now commanding. "Interesting," she said. "So, the system does recognize me after all." The silence in the lobby was deafening. Guests began whispering, phones still recording. Richard stuttered, "Miss Ocasio, I had no idea. She raised a hand gently. Please, don't apologize yet. You were doing your job, just not the right way. The next few minutes would flip the entire hotel upside down as Alexandria revealed not just her name, but a lesson every employee in that room would never forget. The lobby was silent. Every sound, the ticking clock, the echo of the fountain, even the soft jazz in the background seemed to fade. All eyes were now on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, standing gracefully in front of the front desk. Her simple jeans and glasses suddenly seemed like a disguise for something far more powerful: authority, humility, and quiet strength. The young security guard, still stunned, whispered to Richard, "Sir, she's on the system. Presidential suite under VIP access." Richard's throat went dry. His face turned pale. The receptionist who had mocked her earlier looked frozen. Guests nearby were already filming, whispering in disbelief. "Wait, that's really her?" One woman said. "Yes," another replied. "I recognize her from the news. She's the owner, the founder." The realization began spreading like wildfire through the lobby. Within seconds, whispers turned into stunned silence. Alexandria looked around, not angry, not shouting, just disappointed. And somehow, that calm disappointment hit harder than any loud reaction could have. She slowly walked back to the front desk, her heels echoing softly across the marble floor. When she spoke, her voice was calm but full of authority. "I came here tonight to see how my hotel was treating people. I wanted to know if the respect we promised on paper was being lived in reality." She looked at the receptionist first, the young woman who had told her to go to a cheaper hotel. Their eyes met, and the receptionist couldn't hold the gaze. "You judged me based on my clothes, my tone, my appearance. You didn't even bother to check my name properly." Her voice remained calm, but the entire room could feel the weight of her words. Richard finally spoke, trying to regain control. "Miss Senator Ocasio-Cortez, please, allow us to explain." Alexandria raised her hand slightly. "There's no need to explain. I've seen everything I needed to see." A reporter, who happened to be staying in the hotel, had now joined the small crowd forming near the bar. He whispered to his camera, "This is incredible. The hotel owner herself was denied service by her own staff, and look at how composed she is." The moment had gone viral before it even officially ended. Alexandria turned toward the other guests and spoke louder now, not to scold, but to teach. This hotel was built to stand for respect, not just for the wealthy, not just for the powerful, but for everyone: the cleaners, the waiters, the guests who walk in quietly without luxury bags or bodyguards. Her voice echoed softly across the marble floor. "If my own staff can't understand that, then everything I've worked for means nothing." Richard swallowed hard. "Ma'am, please, we didn't know," she interrupted gently. "That's exactly the problem. You didn't know because you didn't care to know." Her tone wasn't harsh. It was truthful, and that truth hit every single person standing there. The receptionist's eyes filled with tears. "I am so sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean." Alexandria gave a faint smile. "I know, but tonight, you learned something valuable. You never know who's standing in front of you, so always choose kindness over arrogance." A pause filled the room. Everyone listened. No one moved. If you were in Alexandria's place, would you forgive them or fire them on the spot? Tell me in the comments and let me know which country you're watching from. Then she turned to Richard, the manager. "Richard, you'll gather your team in the conference room in 10 minutes. I'll be there to address everyone personally." Richard nodded quickly, trembling slightly. "Yes, ma'am. Of course." As Alexandria began walking toward the elevators, the same waiter from earlier, Luis, the only one who had treated her kindly, stepped forward quietly. "Ma'am," he said softly, I knew something wasn't right. I'm really sorry for how they treated you." Alexandria smiled warmly for the first time that night. "Luis, thank you. You did what every decent person should do. You showed respect without knowing who I was. That matters more than anything." She placed a hand on his shoulder before stepping into the elevator. The doors closed slowly as the entire lobby stood in silence, every staff member realizing their mistake, and every guest realizing they had just witnessed something unforgettable. In the next 10 minutes, the entire hotel staff would be called in, and what Alexandria said in that meeting would change their lives forever. 10 minutes later, the air inside the hotel conference room was thick with tension. Every employee, from the receptionist to the waiters, the manager, and even housekeeping, sat nervously in their seats. The usual chatter that filled these meetings was gone. The only sound was the faint ticking of the wall clock. The door opened, and in walked Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Gone was the quiet guest in jeans. Now, she carried the unmistakable presence of a leader, calm, poised, and radiating authority without needing to say a single word. Every head turned. Richard, the manager, stood immediately, his voice shaky. Senator Ocasio-Cortez, we want to sincerely apologize. Alexandria raised a hand. Please, sit down. This isn't about apologies. This is about understanding. The room fell silent again. She placed her phone on the table and looked around slowly, making eye contact with every person there. I came here tonight without a press team, without a security detail. I wanted to see how you treat the people who walk through those doors, not the ones with money or status, but the ones who come in quietly, expecting simple courtesy. No one spoke. Even the air felt heavier. And what I saw, she continued, was arrogance, disrespect, a complete lack of empathy. You didn't just deny me a room. You denied someone their dignity. The receptionist, the same woman who had mocked her earlier, had tears in her eyes now. She whispered, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't know it was you." Alexandria's gaze softened slightly. That's exactly the point. You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them with respect. Richard lowered his head. Luis, the kind waiter, stood quietly in the back, watching everything unfold. When we built this hotel, Alexandria continued, we promised the public something different, a place where every person from any background could walk in and feel valued, not judged by their clothes, not by their accent, not by their appearance. She walked around the room slowly, her tone steady and sincere. But tonight, you proved that promise was broken. You made assumptions. You chose attitude over kindness. And that's something I can't ignore. Her words hit like thunder, not because they were loud, but because they were true. The staff sat frozen. Every one of them knew she was right. If you were in Alexandria's place, what would you do? Forgive them, or let them face the consequences? Type your answer below, and tell me what city and country you're watching from. Alexandria stopped near the end of the table and looked directly at Richard. Richard, you're the manager. Your job is to lead by example. Yet you stood there and watched your team disrespect a guest, even encouraged it. Richard swallowed hard. Ma'am, I was trying to enforce policy. No, she interrupted. You were enforcing ego. You saw a woman who didn't fit your idea of importance and you treated her as less than human. Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of disappointment that words rarely hold. Leadership is not about power, she said firmly. It's about responsibility. And tonight, every one of you forgot that. The room was silent again. Some of the staff wiped their eyes quietly. Luis stood still, guilt and relief mixing in his expression, guilt for his colleague's behavior, and relief that the truth was finally being spoken aloud. Alexandria turned toward him. Luis, she said gently, you were the only one who treated me with respect, even when you thought I was just another guest. Luis shook his head humbly. I just wanted to help, ma'am. That's my job. That's more than your job, Alexandria replied. That's humanity. She looked back at the rest of the staff. Luis will be promoted to Senior Guest Relations Officer effective immediately. The staff gasped quietly. Luis looked stunned. Ma'am, I don't know what to say. You've already said enough through your actions, she said kindly. Then, her tone shifted. It was still gentle, but now final. As for the rest of you, your employment here is terminated, effective tonight. A collective gasp filled the room. The receptionist covered her mouth in shock. Richard froze. This may feel harsh, she continued, but this hotel was built on values that cannot be compromised. If you can't treat a stranger with respect, then you don't belong in a place that was founded on compassion. She gathered her phone and stood tall. Let this be a reminder. No one loses their job tonight because of a mistake. You lost it because of a mindset. With that, Alexandria turned and walked out of the room, leaving behind an unforgettable silence, one filled not with anger, but with reflection. As the doors closed, the sound of her footsteps echoed with a message that would outlive that night. Respect costs nothing, but it changes everything. By morning, the story would spread across the world and millions would praise Alexandria for standing up for humility and justice. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall glass windows of the hotel lobby. But this wasn't an ordinary morning. Every television screen, every phone, every social media feed was buzzing with one story. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez denied a room at her own hotel. Clips from last night's lobby incident had already gone viral. Hundreds of guests had recorded the moment she calmly revealed her identity. Now, Millions of people around the world were watching in disbelief. News anchors repeated the same headline again and again. AOC teaches her staff a lesson in humility. Power used with grace. Alexandria's quiet reaction wins hearts. Owner of luxury hotel tests her own employees and fires them for arrogance. Within hours, hashtags like hashtag respect everyone and hashtag AOC story were trending globally. At the hotel, the atmosphere had completely changed. Staff members from other departments, housekeeping, kitchen, maintenance, stood whispering about what had happened. Some were shocked, some were inspired, and a few admitted quietly, she was right. We'd lost touch with our values. In the middle of the lobby, Luis, the waiter who had treated Alexandria kindly, was now standing in a brand new uniform. He had been promoted overnight, just as she promised. A badge on his chest now read, Guest Relations Officer Luis Mendoza. He didn't walk with pride, he walked with purpose, because he knew this promotion wasn't just a reward. It was a message. A few guests approached him. Luis, we saw the video online, one woman said. You were amazing. The way you treated her with kindness, that's what hospitality really means. Luis smiled humbly. Thank you, ma'am. She taught me more in one night than any training ever could. Meanwhile, in her office upstairs, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat by the window, sipping her coffee and looking out at the morning skyline. Her assistant entered with a tablet. Ma'am, she said, your video has over 80 million views. The world is talking about what happened last night. Alexandria smiled faintly. It's not about the views, she said softly. It's about the message. Her assistant nodded. You've got interview requests from CNN, BBC, and several news channels. Everyone wants to hear your statement. Alexandria turned away from the window and spoke with quiet conviction. Then I'll say what needs to be said, not to shame anyone, but to remind people what respect really means. If you believe respect should never depend on someone's status, type the word respect in the comments and tell me which country you're watching from. Later that afternoon, Alexandria stood in front of the cameras at a press conference. She didn't read from a script. She spoke from the heart. What happened last night wasn't just about a hotel. It was about how easily we judge people. Somewhere along the way, we've started valuing appearance more than attitude, wealth more than kindness. She paused, letting her words sink in. Respect is not a privilege. It's a basic human right, something every person deserves. Whether they walk in wearing a suit or a simple shirt, the journalist scribbled frantically, capturing every word. Her tone was steady, humble, yet full of power. I didn't fire anyone because they made a mistake, she continued. I made that decision because they showed a mindset that poisons every workplace. Arrogance. The audience fell silent. Then, slowly, applause began, quiet at first, then growing louder, until the entire room stood on its feet. The moment became the highlight clip of the year. That evening, Alexandria posted a message on her social media. You never know who you're talking to, but no matter who it is, treat them with dignity. Because respect doesn't reveal who they are, it reveals who you are. The post was shared over 20 million times in a single day. Messages poured in from every corner of the world, teachers, waiters, drivers, even CEOs thanking her for reminding them what true leadership looks like. One comment stood out. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard. At sunset, Alexandria walked quietly through the hotel lobby once more. This time, every staff member stood respectfully, greeting her with sincerity, not fear, but admiration. Luis approached her and said softly, Ma'am, I'll make sure this place always remembers your message. Alexandria smiled. You don't need to remember me, Luis. Just remember the lesson. She turned toward the exit, the evening light glowing around her. Guests whispered, employees watched, and a sense of unity filled the air. That night, her story wasn't just trending, it was changing minds. Because sometimes, the most powerful way to lead is not through anger or revenge, but through grace and example. But the story didn't end there. What Alexandria did next would turn this one-night incident into a worldwide movement for respect and equality. The story might have started in one hotel lobby, but it didn't end there. Within a week, the viral video of Alexandria's calm yet powerful stand had become a global symbol of respect and humility. Schools, companies, and organizations around the world were using her story in workshops about leadership and equality. Major news outlets called it the AOC lesson. Talk shows debated it. Business magazines analyzed it, and social media was flooded with one simple message: respect everyone always. Alexandria didn't seek fame from the event. In fact, she refused most interviews after the initial press conference. Instead, She focused on turning this moment into something meaningful. She launched a new campaign called Project Grace, a global initiative promoting kindness and fair treatment in workplaces, schools, and public institutions. Her first post under the campaign read, "We can't change the world overnight, but we can change how we treat the person standing in front of us today." The comment section exploded with support. People from over 100 countries shared their stories of being ignored, disrespected, or judged and how they chose dignity over anger. A teacher from the Philippines wrote, "When I saw what happened to you, I realized respect starts with me. I now tell my students to treat the janitor with the same kindness they show me." A hotel worker from Kenya commented, "Thank you for showing us that humility isn't weakness, it's power." The story had become more than a scandal. It had become a movement. A few months later, Alexandria visited the same hotel again, but this time, it looked completely different. The staff greeted guests warmly. Luis, now head of guest relations, led a training session on empathy and equality. The walls displayed a new motto engraved in gold letters, "Respect is luxury." As Alexandria walked through the lobby, she smiled quietly, not because the place had changed but because the people had. Luis approached her and said, "Ma'am, everyone knows your story. They call it the night that changed hospitality forever." Alexandria laughed softly. "It wasn't me who changed it, Luis. It was the truth that did." They stood together, watching guests check in not as strangers, but as equals. If you believe no one should ever be judged by their looks, clothes, or status, type respect in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. That night, Alexandria returned home, exhausted but fulfilled. She looked out her window at the city lights and thought about everything that had happened. She whispered to herself, "You can't always control how people treat you, but you can always control how you respond." Her phone buzzed with a notification. Another million people had joined Project Grace. She smiled, closed her eyes, and finally rested, knowing that a moment of humility had sparked a wave of humanity. Because in the end, true power doesn't come from titles or money, it comes from how you treat people when no one's watching.